Looks like we've got Cindy and Laura and JJ. Um, I'm having an issue logging into the, I mean, oh, looks like I might have been muted. Yes. Um, this was just for city staff. I'm having an issue logging into the city's platform. I don't know if my other board members are having that issue or not, but
I had Paula send me the link, Sam, because it wasn't bookmarked anymore. I don't know what that was about.
okay. Yeah, Paula, if you could email me the link or even send it in the chat here, I can try based on that.
Me too. Where did my chat go? Now for some reason I can't chat. So excuse me.
Or Monica, if you could also try to forward me the link that you got sent, I can try that as well.
Sam, I just sent it to you. For some reason I can't put it in the chat.
Okay. Hmm.
Okay, I showed that you're in.
Yes, looks like it worked. And then are you able to see if everyone else is successfully on that system, on that platform as well?
The only one I do not have is Mike Privet.
Is he on the Zoom call?
I did not see him, no.
There he is.
I tried to call him, but I got no answer.
Okay. We'll give him a couple of minutes here and then we'll go ahead and get started without him. Okay. Just to check with city staff, are we recording already?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And if Mr. Privet joins us, he can join us whenever he logs in.
Sam,
Yes.
sorry. I'm going to go ahead and mark Mr. Privet in. If he does not show up to the meeting, then he'll just be marked absent for each one of the items.
Okay. Started. Welcome to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for August 6, 2020. Just now called to order. If this meeting is disconnected at any time, the meeting will be stopped and will reconvene once the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled Board of Adjustment meeting. The meeting and documents are located at okc.gov. For anyone wishing to speak on a matter, you can speak under citizens to be heard, or if you want to speak on a particular item, hopefully you've reached out to city staff already and arranged to have your name on that list. If you have not, we'll provide an opportunity before we vote on any matter to make sure that everyone is heard. We'll call the case. I'll recognize the applicant, and then we'll recognize any protestants. We'll close with the applicant speaking if necessary. We'll deliberate, ask any questions, and then the board will vote. If you call in after your item has been heard, you'll be allowed to be heard, citizens to be heard at the very end of this meeting. When you call in, staff will mute your phone. I ask that all participants, except for the board members, keep their sound on mute until they're recognized to speak. Kind of know how to use this platform by now, but to unmute, you click the microphone on your screen or press *6 on the phone. Please remember to have only one person speaking at a time for the purposes of a clear record. If more than one person speaks, the system generally mutes so that only one speaker will be heard and not both speakers. For anyone speaking today, including board members that are participating by telephone, it's important to identify yourself before you speak for the purposes of the record. And the meeting's now called to order. The first item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the July 2nd, 2020 meeting. Do we have a motion or any changes to the minutes?
I'll move we receive.
I'll second.
Okay. And Mike, are you able to see the voting pane yet on your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
It just popped up.
Okay.
Mr. Merchant, this is Cindy. Should we do a roll call?
I figured since we have video now, and I think everyone of the board members is on video, we wouldn't need to, but
Okay.
if we need to, for the purposes of the record, we can, or if Laura tells us we need to, we certainly can as well.
It's probably, this is Laura, it's probably best to do it just to be safe.
Okay, sure. We'll go ahead and start with that.
Okay. So we have member Mr. Merchant,
Present?
Ms. Asbury,
Present.
Privet. So he'll be absent. Mr. Voorhees,
Present.
Ms. Yarbera.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay. And we'll move back here to receiving the minutes of the July 2nd meeting. I think, Mr. Voorhees, you wanted to move, or do you see the option to move?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, it
Looks
looks like,
like Monica moved.
okay. Looks like it's still waiting for you to second.
How am I supposed to do that?
So on my screen, it's got a button that popped up asking if I'd like to second it. I don't know. I know you've had some issues in the past.
Here, I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay. I would like to get it sorted out on Mr. Voorhees' screen to make sure he's accurately seeing everything, because he might want to move or second something later on in the meeting.
Okay.
But for now, we've got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the July 2nd, 2020 meeting. Go ahead and cast your votes.
I don't see a voting pane. There's no yay, nay, abstain down here,
All right.
but I'll vote yes.
Did you hit escape whenever the meeting started?
No, I just
Okay.
did.
Yeah, whenever the meeting starts, for some reason, the host screen goes full screen, and we have to hit escape before we can see the voting platform.
Ah,
So it looks like someone selected it for you. Was that you?
I found it. Give me 2 or 3 tries, I'll get it.
Okay, perfect.
Great, Mike.
Staff for Mr. Privet who's not there. Yeah, I guess you guys can override and just say that he's absent. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. Do we have any? I believe we have some continuance requests, but if staff could read those into the record.
We have 3 requests for continuance today. Item 15, case 14768, defer to August 20th. And item 16, 14741, and 17, 14729, defer to September 17th.
Was anyone in this meeting intending to speak on any of those matters? Hearing none, I see that we're about to have an option to vote to continue those items as requested. So if someone would like to move now, I think I see the pain to do that. We have a motion from Ms. Ybarra. Do we have a second? And we have a motion and a second to continue the items as requested. Cast your votes, please.
Okay, I don't see the voting pane again. I hit escape. Oh, got it.
Okay, perfect. And the motion is approved and those items are continued. Next item on the agenda is request by the public. Seeing none there, we can move on to the public hearings. And the first item there is items on the consent docket. And we have nothing on the consent docket this week, so we'll move on to items requiring a separate vote.
Item 1 is case 14757, application for renewal of a special exception of David and Katrina Kidd to allow a mobile home to serve as a temporary second dwelling to relieve a medical hardship in the AA district at 10101 South Cemetery Road. I might add that I know the board has seen several applications for medical hardship. This is the first renewal we've seen in a while. And the code allows for another 3-year renewal as long as the medical hardship presented with the original application is still evident. Katrina Kidd, the applicant, is on the line.
Yes, this is Katrina Kidd.
Okay, if you wanted to go ahead and present your application.
Okay, I am asking to renew my special exception permit for medical hardship to be able to leave both dwellings on my property. And I believe I've turned in the doctor's notes and things of that nature for y'all to look at.
Okay, and then the last special exception, was that for a period of 3 years?
The last was 18 months. I'm requesting 3 years.
Okay. Can you kind of give us some background into why the last one was 18 months?
Last time I had protesters that continued to protest for different reasons. They didn't want me to be able to continue to request to renew. So I'm not sure why time was taken, but that was what went on.
Okay. So was it renewed the last time, or was that a new request?
This was a new, that last time was a new request.
Okay. And, you know, it seems like this is how the process is sort of supposed to work whenever some time is taken off of what the statute and what the code allows. So if we shave it down to 18 months, you know, and there were some protests and there are no protests this time, presumably, you know, things went pretty well and people are no longer protesting this application. They all received notice just like they did last time, at least as far as we know. And so if they had a protest, I think we would have heard about it. My only hesitation is wondering whether, you know, how long you think you're going to need a type of special exception like this going into the future, because this particular relief is really only supposed to be short term, year, 2 years, 3 years max. And there's the possibility of relief that would last a lot longer than that, but this is not that. So I'm wondering if this is the best avenue for you to get the relief you're seeking, or if this is kind of a temporary circumstance that won't last into perpetuity.
I'm not sure what other avenues I have to me, so this is just where I've been directed to make this work. There's no guarantee on time for anybody, so I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't like to be kind of cold when we're talking about these kinds of issues, but there is a difference if it's, maybe a child that needs the assistance, or a younger, an 18-year-old that might be around for another 70 years, versus a lot of times you get some applications for some elderly folks that just need some assistance. And so I guess the question is, how long do you foresee this lasting? Because if it's going to be longer than 2 or 3 years, I think maybe we'd talk about other options that you might have.
I would say longer. I would say probably 5 to 7 years is what I'm looking at.
Well, it's sort of up to you. I know, JJ, if you can think of other more permanent options for her. I just can't have her keep coming back for variances and paying that application fee if there's something else that might be better for her that's more lasting.
Historically, temporary has been the term of the medical need. We have applications that we have given 3-year extensions to time and time and time again until the need is no longer there. The person moves to assisted or nursing care or something. But really, the 3 years is just for us to keep it in the queue and keep checking on it, because eventually, once that medical need goes away, the mobile home is supposed to go away.
Yeah, I think that makes sense in this circumstance, particularly given that there were some protests earlier. And if you wanted to get some more permanent relief, that would last forever, you might get some more protests. But in any event, I think I can support it for a period of 2 to 3 years. I don't know where the rest of the board stands on approval and or a time frame, but I can support this and then check back in at a later time.
So this is Kitty. I would like to make a motion that we approve case number 14757 for a period of 3 years, an extension.
Let me double check really quickly. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this matter, but is there anyone else on the line that intended to speak on this application, either in support or protest? Hearing none, I see the voting pane has popped up. So once that's ready, Ms. Asbury, if you'd like to make your motion. And this was for a period of 3 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case number 14757 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years. Cast your votes, please. Ms. Ybarra, I think we've got one more. Yeah. And the application's approved.
Item 2 is case number 14756. It's a request of Johnson and Associates on behalf of Paul and Pamela Bingham for a variance to the minimum lot size standards for an accessory structure located at 322 Northwest 27th Street. And this one was went to the HP Commission and was recommended for approval.
Okay, is the applicant or applicant's representative on the line?
Yeah, this is Tim Johnson on behalf of the Bingham's, the applicant. So this is a application to allow us to get the variance to the lot size, as JJ mentioned, as well as the variance to allow a flat roof structure to be built. And as JJ mentioned, it's already been submitted. The lot split's been submitted and reviewed and approved by the HP Commission, as well as the plan for the garage. So we would appreciate your favored vote.
Yeah, and Mr. Johnson, if you could just go through each of the variance requests for us. I mean, I think I have an understanding of what exactly you're requesting here, but for the purposes of the record, if you could go over each one of them and kind of show how they're justified under the code.
Sure. So this is an existing condition where you have a duplex on one lot, on one portion of the lot, and then a freestanding building on the other portion of the lot. We've worked with the utilities department to get utility access to both halves of the lot. So the variance we're seeking there is on the lot size. We're less than the 6,000 square foot for the minimum two-family lot. And then the setback of the garage will be located in front of the setback. So this is the proposed new garage, the two-car garage. And by code, they're required to be behind the rear wall of the main structure. And in this case, there's not enough room to push it that far back. And then the last variance we're asking for is the flat roof, as opposed to the 412 pitch, which is required by the code as well. Right, and so this is all things that have been there prior to the zoning code. These were built many, many years ago.
I think one thing that wasn't entirely clear was the garage going from one car to two car. So that would be in the same location, just going from one to two cars?
Yes, sir. You can see on the map, thanks for putting that up, where the garage is slightly out from what the code requires is the setback from the rear wall.
Okay.
This is a corner lot. I failed to mention that. Served by an alley and two streets.
There it is. Okay. Board members, any questions or comments of the applicant? I think for me, this was a closer call, but what tips it over the edge is HP being in support of it and recommending approval. If it didn't go through that process, I think I'd have some more questions here, but given that deference and given that it's a closer call, that for me kind of tips it over the edge here. So I can support it. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this. Did anyone else that's on the line want to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none. Board members, questions or comments, or we can open this up to a motion.
This is Kitty. I'll make a motion that we approve case number 14756 based on the fact that HP approved it and there are no protests to it whatsoever. So I would move that to be accepted.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Case number 14756 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance and the HP Commission recommended approval. Cast your votes, please. All right, I think we have all the votes in and it's approved.
Okay, item 3 is case number 14758. It's a request of Dustin Knight for a variance to the accessory building regulations located at 13013 Southwest 41st Street.
The applicant on the line?
Yes.
Okay, if you wanted to present your application?
Yes. Hello, my name is Dustin Knight. I live at 13013 Southwest 41st Street in the Gemstone Acres Housing Edition. My house sits on a little over 1 acre, and I'm here today asking for a variance to the maximum allowed square footage of an accessory building for a lot this size. I'm wanting to build a 40-foot wide by 30-foot deep building and extend the roof line an additional 24 feet for a porch that will be open on 3 sides up to 10 feet. The porch portion of the building will be completely behind the house. The reason for the additional square footage for the porch is that I'm passionate about restoring and customizing my vehicles and motorcycles that I own. And while the 1,200 square foot of the enclosed portion of the building would be large enough to store my vehicles and bikes, but it will not be large enough to do any work on one, especially if I'm doing any type of welding, cutting, grinding, or sanding. So I'd have to move the others outside to have the room necessary and as not to damage them. And while they're outside though, I would want them to be under cover to protect them from the elements. And lastly, I'm aware of 2 square footage variances of accessory buildings approved by the Board of Adjustment in my neighborhood, one of which is very similar to what I am wanting to do. So your consideration in this matter would be appreciated, and thank you for your time.
Okay, looks like you've done some research, which I appreciate. It does seem like it's kind of a bit of a unique area compared to maybe some of the other residential areas, and you have a lot more room to kind of work with. The fact that these are kind of common in the area tips in your favor. It does look like you've cut it down a little bit, which I appreciate. I think the fact that the whole thing's not going to be enclosed tips in your favor. I have a soft spot for working on and restoring cars and motorcycles, so that tips in your favor, although that's not an element under the code. I think with that, I mean, I think I can support the application. I don't know if any other board members had any questions or comments.
I just have a comment. If my house was as big as what you're wanting to build, then I'd be super happy. That's an accessory place, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be large, but they've got a lot of land to work with, so I think that
They do.
makes it allowable. So, was anyone on the line? I don't have anyone else that was signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone on the line that wanted to speak on this application? Okay.
I'm very sympathetic to classic cars and trucks having a good home. So yeah, I'll move approval.
2 o'clock. Sorry.
Okay, looks like we have a motion and a second now to approve the variance in case number 14758 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once the voting pane pops up, cast your votes, please. And the application is approved.
Outstanding. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item 4 is case 14759. It's a request of Springfield Signs for a variance to the maximum amount of attached wall signs located at 12017 Northwest Expressway.
Is the applicant on the line?
Yes, we are.
Okay, if you wanted to go ahead and present your application.
Yes, I'm Chris Hampton. This is Dave Schritty. We're on behalf of Braum's. They're in Oklahoma City. Right now, the allowable is 200 square feet for the wall signs on the building, but the way the lot is sitting, and the buildings are designed as a standard for the company. If you turn the building the other way, there wouldn't be enough allowable room for driving even around the building. You can see on the easterly side that drive that comes through there is taken off of our property already, and which is kind of hindering us in the way we had turned our building. Also, safety as far as public traffic is also taken into consideration when they put these buildings in. If we would have set it the other way, it could have backed up traffic onto the expressway. And also, if we would have turned it the other way, we would have been allowed almost a little over 300 square feet more in wall signage. So I think we're just kind of looking at the brand standard of what they do nationally and just trying to put it into this site right here. You know, it's modest as far as sizing and coloring comparative to the norm of other restaurants. So we just ask that you guys look at this and have mercy and give us a variance on this.
Looking at this attachment here that it looks like it's being displayed right now, the signage that exists on the building, is that cumulative of all that signage? I see there's the Fresh Market sign and all that. You're around 200 square feet. Is that including all the signs?
No, there are some that are proposed that are, no, this is the existing signage. Yeah, so the proposed signage is going to be on the north elevation and the west elevation. So the total right now is right at 199.06, I think. And the cumulative with everything is 311.24. So we're asking for a little over 100 square feet extra. And like I said, still the allowable. If we'd have turned our building the other way, we would have been 200 under allowable. So that's why we're just asking for this variance for this, just because the way the companies build their buildings and their brand standards, and also the way the lot is set, it just wasn't feasible to face it the other way due to traffic and public safety.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I hear your point about how the company, you know, orients their building and how that impacts that. I'm very familiar with Brahms, probably too familiar with Brahms, but I understand that, how it is kind of turned and you've got the parking area compared to maybe a different use that might be contemplated by the code. My only thought was, well, first I'll ask, I'm a bit concerned or confused. I thought the application said that some of that wall signage is already on there, or is it being replaced?
It is, but yeah, they're looking to replace some of it.
Okay, gotcha.
Because they were wanting to get, I believe they were wanting to get open and get it going. But yeah, from the beginning, they've wanted the extra wall signage. They just didn't take the steps to do it when they first did it. I don't know if it was an oversight or what. But.
Yeah, and I think my only thought, which it's probably too late at this point if the sign's already up, but I think the point is that signage, that's the wall signage, because of the way the building's oriented, isn't really effective, and so you need that new sign. But at that point, I think I would, especially if this were a new project and that weren't up yet, I would say if people aren't going to see that wall signage anyway, maybe shrink that, and then we wouldn't need as big of a variance. But if it's already up anyway, you know, we're probably past that discussion.
Essentially, it's the west elevation that they really like to have, because that's the drive-through side. And that's the side that traffic actually sees driving down the road.
Yeah.
The rear elevation, which is the north elevation, that's just, I think there's other businesses back behind there. They would like to have that, but if they had to sacrifice something, that would be the one that they would sacrifice.
Okay.
If they had to.
All right.
Board members, any questions or comments of the applicants?
This is Monica Ibarra. Chris, based on that comment, the last comment that you just made, my only concern is that one of the statutory elements is that whatever the variance is, that it's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. And so I'm just wondering if the proposal as is for the, I guess it's a little over 100 or almost 100 square feet is the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship.
I think yes, because size-wise, comparatively to the buildings, they want what we have proposed. So I mean, yeah, that is the minimum. Because I mean, to their brand standard, that's what it would be. I know they don't like to go less just because of the fact that it looks odd on the building. I mean, and that's how they built these and designed these, you know, is to be aesthetically pleasing and also comparative with the building faces or elevations to look right, to where they don't look odd. So I think when Dave said that, I mean, they want it, but there's a little room for wiggle, like you said, because the north side is facing other businesses to the north. And if anything was not allowed, that would be what they would want to sacrifice.
Kind of to Mr. Barrow's point, how big is this? I can't quite read it on my copy. In relation to the existing Brahms sign, that main sign, how large is that main sign? It's, I guess it's
The existing, yeah, the existing is 8127. And I'll be honest, I'm having a hard time reading it myself, even with my glasses on. This for the existing. Are you talking about on the north side or on the front?
On the north side.
On the which side?
That north side.
Oh, the north side.
So it looks like it's going to be similar in size to what already exists there.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit bigger. I think it's 20. Can't tell.
It's a 28-inch tall set Brahms that matches the west elevation Brahms. They're two identical sizes.
Okay, that's what I was going to propose is just to match the existing size of the sign. And if that's smaller than what's proposed here, which I think is over 100 square feet, if it's 88 or something,
yeah,
you're at the variance for 88 feet, and that would alleviate Mr. Ibarra's concern.
Okay, so just we would be matching the north elevation with the west side.
Correct.
Okay.
If it is, and just for clarity, how large is that existing sign that's out there?
The one that's out there now?
Correct.
I can't read it either.
It's 33-inch tall. I can't read the square footage on it.
33.
Should have printed off a better picture here.
You're probably looking at 8 to 10 square feet smaller, I'm thinking. Give me 1 second.
Actually, it's the front one is like their main one that they always do, which is 33-inch tall Brahms. I can't recall the length for sure, but it is significantly larger than the other ones that they put on the building, because they have a 33-inch standard and a 28-inch standard. And so the 28 standards always go on the drive-through side, which is the west elevation. And typically they put them on the rear, which is the north elevation as well. Same way with the hamburgers. The hamburgers that's existing is a 20-inch tall hamburger, and that's what they usually put on the drive-through side as well.
Okay.
And the little B's on the drive-through side, they put them that's not only branding, but aesthetic too, above each drive-through. And those are substantially smaller. Like those are 42-inch tall B's. And then there are two main B's that are existing are 72-inch. So everything on here is brand standard. It's just
different sizes.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ibarra, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I got a little lost on all the numbers, but my main concern is that we are doing, or if we are granting variance, that it's the minimum necessary. And I understand brand standards and what the company wants and all of those things, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like any variance that we're granting is, um, somewhat deferential to those concerns, the brand standards and what the company wants. But so sorry, again, I got a little lost on all of the numbers, but if I can get behind this if we can be sure and get a satisfactory explanation that it's the minimum necessary.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what was going on behind the scene in my mind was just making sure that we didn't place a restriction on it that made it so small that it was a meaningless sign. It couldn't be read or something like that. And so
You need to go out, you need to ignore
if 112 square feet is kind of roughly as small as it can get, then going under that doesn't really provide any relief that would be meaningful. But I don't know that that's true. I think it's a close call, but I can support it as it currently is. I'm only one member of the board, but board members, any other questions or comments or positions? Was anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this matter? Okay. Hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion, either to approve or deny the application or modify?
I'll make a motion to approve because again, it's not that much, but I think because of the branding and everything, and with the recommendation you made about making the signs basically uniform, I make a motion that we approve case number 14759.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14759 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bronze appreciates it very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a good afternoon.
You as well.
Thank you.
Item 5, case number 14760, request of Carrier Rex Road for a variance to permit parking and maneuvering in the street right-of-way located at 9817 Southwestern Avenue. And David Box represents the applicant.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a variance application to allow limited parking in the right-of-way. This is an application that this property saw recently go through the Planning Commission and City Council process. It was zoned formerly office. We sought to add a couple of uses for retail. Western Avenue through this area is now widened. It carries a lot of traffic. It made, we believe, good sense to have the ability to have retail here that was supported by the comp plan. Ultimately, the City Council did approve the SPUD. As part of the process, there was a negotiation with some of the neighbors to the west. If you're going to add retail uses, they are going to tend to drive more traffic to the area. This is an existing building. The parking in front is somewhat limited. And so what we sought to do was to put some parking in the rear of the building. In a normal circumstance, it's not uncommon to find parking behind a retail center. It just happens to be a unique environment here where that is actually part of a public street that serves that neighborhood to the west. The neighbors were very much in favor of this solution to keep a lot of the cars off of their neighborhood streets. So the variance would be in line with what City Council saw and approved. The hardship is without this variance, we are flooding the streets of this neighborhood with cars. We showed the exhibit you see on your screen now as part of our SPUD process. And this will allow these cars to be pulled off the street and parked in the right of way. Again, it's a unique circumstance when you have, I think, this public right of way existing on the rear of a building. So it's the minimum necessary in that all the other code provisions will be met. We think we've captured all of the spaces that we need. And I do not believe that granting of the variance would cause any impact to the public health or serve to undermine the purposes of the comprehensive plan, in that when staff reviewed the zoning request in line with the comprehensive plan, they did recommend approval with this condition that we seek here today. Staff was not able to find any unfavorable considerations. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have and would ask for your approval.
I think it makes sense to me, and it looks like you're trying to alleviate some of the concerns of the neighbors as well. I don't know that I had any questions, but I'll open this up to the rest of the board if there are any questions or comments.
I do have a question. Are there already marked parking spaces there?
No, not right now.
Okay, and how many are you wanting to put there?
7.
7, okay, thank you.
And this will really, the 7 will serve as almost overflow, or perhaps the staff that works in this building, so that all of the spaces that are along Western will be able to be utilized by people that are coming to do business at this facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I didn't see any protests on this. Is there anybody signed up to speak against it?
I think that there's a similar one that had a protest that no longer has a protest, or had an objection from the city that no longer has an objection. But we will give a few seconds at this point to allow anyone that wanted to speak either in support or opposition to the application. Okay, hearing none, I think we can go ahead and open this up for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept case number 1476, given the fact that it's going to alleviate pressure off of the neighborhood and they're going to create parking. So I move that we accept.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14760 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions. Go ahead and cast your votes whenever the pane shows up. And the application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 is case 14761. It's a request of Johnson and Associates on behalf of Daystar Foundation and Library for a parking variance at 3015 United Founders Boulevard.
Hello again, this is Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates on behalf of Daystar. I don't know if you all know much about Daystar, but it's this particular building is located in the middle of the U.S. It's the only building of its kind, and it's there to support the Church of Christ scientists. Basically, their collection of periodicals, Bibles, and written history from Mary Baker Eddy, who was the founder of the Christian Science movement back in the 1800s. So the requirements of parking on this particular square footage of building and for this kind of use would require 126 spaces. There's an existing office building east of the current museum that will be taken down, and then the museum is anticipated to be expanded like you see on the image. The darker gray is the expanded building. It'll have a drop-off area and then parking around the back. They have gardens that are very detailed on the west side of the existing building. If you've been by there, this is just south of the Home Depot off of May Avenue, and United Founders Towers on the south. And then there's that dead-end City Street that goes in, that dumps into the parking lot of Home Depot. The facility just doesn't see many users. It doesn't have any a significant number of employees. And if you go to their website and look, there's a video on there that shows you, really, it's more like a museum. It's for people to come and look, and they can go in there and study, or, you know, just spend time alone. But it's a unique use. The parking requirement for this kind of use is excessive by code. So Sustain OKC, that was recently adopted by the City Council, is very supportive of eliminating parking requirements by use. And we anticipate that to come up in the next, as the code is being updated currently, that parking criteria such as that will change as it applies to new construction and existing reconstruction. So we are seeking this variance to allow the 40 spaces that we show to be ample and adequate for this use. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, you're no stranger to the Board of Adjustment. And I saw that the applicant would agree to a condition of the variance that would, if there's a change in use, then the variance would fall away.
We do agree to that. I apologize. I meant to bring that up.
And, you know, I know you're familiar, but it's difficult for the city's purposes to enforce use changes and variances that are contingent upon use changes and things like that. So I appreciate that, and I suspect that will be a part of any motion and or approval. I just wanted to point out that those are generally kind of difficult to enforce, but I do appreciate that the applicant would propose that. My primary question is, has there been an analysis or ruling out of bike racks and landscaping to reduce the number of parking spaces that you would otherwise have to have?
Oops, accidentally muted myself. Yeah, so they will be there. They are heavily landscaped now, if you've been by there. So they would exceed the landscape requirements to get the reduction, but the reduction still wouldn't get us anywhere near the 40 that we're showing.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you're aware, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but when we see these, if the code requires 126, but due to landscaping and bike racks, you can reduce that down to 100 or 90 or something, it reduces the extent of the variance that we'd be granting. And so that's why I kind of ask if there's something that, I mean, that would make me feel, and all of these applications that come up with regard to parking spaces, that makes me feel more comfortable knowing that there have been efforts made to reduce the number of parking spaces that are required, and therefore the variance is less substantial.
We can agree to adding the bike rack as part of the construction of the new building and making sure that we meet or exceed the reduction provided by landscaping.
And I mean, I guess I hate to continue these matters. I don't know what your planning is like, but I would personally like to see what that number looks like before granting, because I always like to grant a specific number of parking spaces varied from the code before granting, instead of, you know, a commitment to put a bike rack up there. I'd like to know what that number is going to be, and then we can grant the variance for the amount that would be necessary after those concessions have been made.
Yeah, so we just did the calculations. So the requirement would be dropped from 126 to 94, 94 and a half. So let's call it 95. And that would make our difference 55. So we're asking for relief for 55 spaces.
Okay, I appreciate you doing that off the cuff. And that makes me feel more comfortable in that we can grant, and that the motion would be, instead of a variance of 86 spaces, the variance would be 50, 55 or 56. I forgot what you said.
55.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is all the questions I had. I mean, there are some questions about use and how many people would be attending and whether it's open to the public and that kind of stuff. But, I don't think that would change the analysis. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I can support a variance of 55 spaces. In lieu of the change in use or in addition to the change in use, is there a period of time that your client would agree to have this variance for? And I think that would be easier to enforce than the change in use. So for a period of say 20 years or something.
I think that might be harder to enforce than the change of use, but they've been there since the 90s. And they're expanding their collection. That's why they're adding on to the building to create a contiguous connected building to really add more collectible items that they have. So it's kind of staff's call. I think none of us will be doing this 20 years from now. A change of use permit is something that's required by the building code. So if somebody came in there and wanted to change that building to a different use, such as a restaurant or something, they'd have to apply for a change of use permit in order to get a building permit. And that's when that would get flagged.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting a temporal time limit. I'm just sort of thinking out loud at different options. But I think the way that the application is presented now, I could support it. I'm only one member of the board, but 55 spaces contingent upon the condition that's been offered about the use, I could support it. Board members, any other questions or comments?
Mr. Johnson, my only question was if your client is expanding their collection and kind of creating another, collection space, do they not anticipate increased visitors or increased use of that facility in its current use?
We specifically talked to them about that and through their architect, and they do not anticipate. Their use is so minimal now. It's just a collection of history, really.
And I'll sort of add, and this is in support of the application, but I mean, and the application talks about this, but how the code's kind of contemplating less parking being required in the future. I completely agree. I mean, I think we're going to have less people driving personal cars and more people taking Ubers and Lyfts, and at some point in the not too distant future, probably autonomous cars that pick you up and take you where you want to go. So I think the need for expansive parking lots is starting to diminish, which is support of the long-term approval of this application. If there are any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, was anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up for a motion.
I'll move to approve case number 14761 due to it meeting the statutory requirements.
And this is for 55 spaces and
For 55 spaces, correct. And the conditions that, as Mr. Johnson stated, they'll agree to put the bike rack in and meet the landscape requirements to reduce the request to that, or the 95 required spots.
Okay, and then there's the use condition that the applicant proposed, so that if there's a change of use, the variance would no longer be effective. Did you want to add that to your motion or not?
Yeah, I'll incorporate that into my motion.
Okay. And do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14761 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance of 55 spaces and as conditioned proposed by the applicant in the application. Cast your votes, please. And the application's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 7, case 14762, request of Ricardo Garcia for a variance to parking and maneuvering in the I-2 district located at 2001 South May Avenue.
The applicant on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you wanted to go ahead and present your application to us.
He's gonna be having a translator. I don't know if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, he is presenting a variance for a tinting shop located in 2001 South May Avenue. He has a problem with the parking lot because they were requesting him more space for this business. He tried to understand the way, you know, the variance came for and the way you white guys want him to make the parking, because right now he's having 6 parking spots, 3 on the front part of the shop, 3 on the side one, and he also have a garage, you know, plan that will fit 3 more cars inside. This shop is gonna work under appointment. He only makes 4 to 5 cars per day, so we're not gonna have more than 9 cars in that building per day. The traffic is not so, you know, so busy. So yeah, that's the issue that he's having to open this new shop. It used to be a bar, but right now he's wanting to open it just like for a tint shop.
Okay. And JJ or Cindy, I assume this was just non-conforming whenever it was a bar?
Yeah, it's an existing non-conforming. The parking is what it is. I can say that the parking requirement for the bar that was there is much more than what his parking requirement would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I don't think I have any issues with it. Similar to the sentiment from traffic management, where they said they don't mind as long as it stays in this configuration and it stays with this use.
Right.
Then they have no objection, which I agree with. I guess JJ, kind of consistent with that last application. Is there any way other than putting a time limit on this? You know, if someone else opens up another restaurant there.
Time limits are really a problem. Tying it to the use is effective, because if someone comes in, anytime you change the use of a building, even though you don't intend to do anything, you're required to go through the permit process.
Mm-hmm.
And that means your parking is going to get reviewed. If there's not enough parking, it's going to send up a red flag, and they're going to start checking for variances and see that, well, this was tied to the use. You need to go back to the Board of Adjustment or do something to fix your parking requirement.
Okay, I can support this with a similar condition as the last application and as proposed here by traffic management, that just says it continues as a use as a tent shop and without any modification to the site or structure. I could support the application. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. Was anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this application? Okay, I think we can open it up to a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we accept case number 14762 based on the fact that it remains to be used for its intended use, which is a window tinting place.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, and that's conditioned on so long as it's used as a window tinting place and there are no modifications to the site or structure. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Merchant, this is Cindy. I did have Mr. Frere, and I see that he's muted, but he did sign up to speak.
Oh, I do see that. So we'll hold on to the motion and see if we can get Mr. Frere to speak. Mr. Frere, are you able to speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you wanted to go ahead and provide your comments.
Yeah, the only comment I have is the property line itself on the fence. Is it ain't gonna be adjusted or moved in any way?
No, my understanding is none of that would change. I'll ask the applicant and the applicant's representative whether that's accurate. And ma'am, you were translating for the applicant.
Yes.
Is that accurate? There's not going to be any change to the property line, correct?
No.
Okay, gotcha. And
Okay,
Mr. President,
fine.
does that alleviate your concern?
No, that's it.
Okay, we appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Asbury, you've got your motion pending. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
You want me to hit that again?
Yeah, probably. We'll just see.
Oh, it
what-
just popped up, Monica.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14762 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance, subject to the condition that it shall only be used. The variance is only granted so long as the property is used as a window tinting shop, excuse me, and there will be no modifications to the site. Cast your votes, please. Okay, I see that it has passed, but there's still a motion option on my screen, but I do see that, there we go. The application's been approved.
Okay, item 8 is 14763, request of Jeffrey and Christine Hoke for a variance to the 15-foot side yard building setback at 11200 Lorinda Lane.
Okay, is the applicant on the line?
Yes, I am.
Present your application.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Huck, and I live at 11200 Loretta Lane in the Rio de Bella neighborhood. I'm here today requesting a variance on PUD 978, section 5.3, which requires a setback of 15 feet from the side property line. I wish to build an outdoor 25-foot by 50-foot detached middle garage on my property. I'm requesting a side setback of 9 feet from the property line. My property is long and narrow compared to most lots in the neighborhood. I have an in-ground pool, and city ordinance requires a 15-foot setback from the water line. In order to achieve this, I would need a 9-foot setback from the side property line. Further back on my property, I have underground septic lines, making construction in this area impractical. The building would also not be accessible from our current driveway. Behind our property is a green belt, and placing the building further back would obstruct my neighbors and our view of the asset to our properties. The site in which I'm requesting the variance on is shared with Teresa Reiser, the owner and resident of 11208 Loretta Lane. In my application, I included a letter requesting a variance be granted. She also was afraid of the view obstruction by placing the building further back on the property. I also included in my application a letter from Austin and Franny Cheatham. They're the neighbors on the opposing side of my property at 11128 Loretta Lane. This letter was also in support of the variance being approved. If relief is granted, the detached garage would not cause a detriment to the public good and would add value to the property. The garage would be custom built with matching brick to the house. The construction would be of high quality. In researching my request for variance, I learned there have been several requests for variance of PUD 978 section 5.3 in my neighborhood. These were successfully granted by the Board of Adjustments. All other construction will be in accordance with all zoning and building requirements. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, Mr. Huck, I appreciate it. The only question I have here is, I mean, there's one way to potentially fit within that setback requirement and meet the other setback requirement from the that water line is having a smaller building potentially. And so if you could talk about why you need a building that's this size, I think that would.
I am constructing the building to build an indoor batting cage for 2 of my competitive children that play ball. And to get the length of cage, which makes hitting in an indoor cage practical, I was needing the 50-foot and the 25-foot wide to allow enough room to fit the cage in a workout area.
How large is that bathroom? Because you may can pick up some footage from that area.
Taking out the bathroom?
No, I did not say take it out. I asked how large is it? And if you could possibly pick up some footage if you reduce the size of it, because it looks pretty big just by the outline on the screen.
It's a 5-foot by 5-foot room with a sink and a toilet basically in it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir.
Is the plan.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think,
the porch is big too.
you know, one of the elements you have to meet is a hardship. You know, it's debatable whether the wanting
Ripping out the existing septic lines and replacing.
Well, just building the structure in the first place, you know, generally there's more of a hardship established in this case, because, you know, maybe you just don't get the building that size. You know, wanting a building that size is not necessarily a hardship. The one thing that I think saves you is just the area that this is in. The kind of abutting uses there. I don't think they're going to be offended by having this structure there. The neighbors have agreed that they don't oppose, although those neighbors could change. You do have a very peculiar shape of your property, which tips in your favor under the conditions that we have to consider. So those are just kind of my general thoughts. I'll open up to the rest of the Board of Adjustment, see if they have any other comments.
I think since his neighbors are in approval, it shouldn't present a problem. And normally people who live out on spaces like that don't move too frequently. So therefore it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Any other comments from the board members or questions? Is anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this application? Okay. If not, we can open it up to a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we accept case number 14763 based upon the fact that there were no objections from any of the neighbors.
And then just for the purposes of the record, not so much for this application, but future applications, I know that Ms. McDevitt, it would help her if these ever end up in litigation if we would say that we also find that we're moving for approval because we find that the statutory conditions for a variance have been met. And I think that was implied in your motion, but if we get that on the record, I think that would help.
Yes, I will rephrase that based upon the recommendation that the statutory requirements were met.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14763 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once the voting pane opens, cast your votes, please. And it's been approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir. Oh, JJ, I think we got you on mute.
Okay. Item 9, case 14764, request of Mustang Park Development for a variance to permit parking and maneuvering in the street right-of-way located at 4831 Mustang Park Boulevard. Subsequent to the staff reports, the applicant submitted an amended site plan that hopefully each of you got. And with that, traffic management removed their objection to the request. And David Box represents the applicant.
Okay.
Good afternoon, once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. The applicant is also on the line with us, Anthony Mirzai. Kendall Dillon was on the line. He's a civil engineer, and the internet in his office went out in the year 2020. That is a terrible thing to happen, but he can be available via text if necessary. So the application here is a variance request to allow maneuvering within the right-of-way. None of the parking will be within the right-of-way, as JJ said. Where we originally had it along Mustang Park Boulevard, traffic staff objected to based upon proximity to the intersection. Kendall was able to rework it and move the parking spaces to a location that traffic management did find acceptable. These type of requests are becoming common in neighborhoods. Most neighborhoods now are pretty heavy in their amenity packages, which is great. However, if you find yourself living in a house by the amenity, what you're faced with is the streets in front of your house being flooded with cars. And so we're getting those cars off of the street into the private property, but we need to be able to maneuver within the right-of-way. The reason being, you want parking next to your amenity, but what you don't want is a large commercial type parking lot. And so this is the healthy balance. If this was a private street neighborhood, we wouldn't need to be here, but because these are public streets, it does require us to come before the Board of Adjustment since it's a public street. So the only negative comment was the comment from traffic management. That has now since gone away. Therefore, there are no negative considerations that staff was able to find. So we'd be happy to answer any questions and would ask for your approval.
Okay. With the objection being addressed, I think this application makes sense for me. I agree that I'm not sure that this is exactly what the code contemplated in prohibiting this kind of maneuvering. It should probably be revisited at some point, but until then, we'll keep getting these applications. But you know, I think with the redesign, I can support this. I don't see any reason not to. I think it meets all the elements. Board members, any questions or comments? Was there anyone else on the line that wanted to speak either in support or opposition of the application? Okay, hearing none, I think we can open this up for a motion.
I'll move approval for case number 14764 with the, I know it's not part of our packet, but the new design that was submitted to us for the purpose that it meets the statutory requirements.
Okay. It looks like the screen's open up on my end, Mr. Barr. There we go. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14764 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for the variance as modified. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 10 is case 14765, request of Marshawn Wilkes for a variance to the fence height regulations in the AA district located at 10201 Rooster Road.
Okay, Mr. Wilkes, I see you're present. If you wanted to introduce yourself and give your address and present your application.
Yeah, I'm Marshawn Wilkes. Sorry for the echo. Is there an echo on your end?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Maybe if you turn your volume down while you're speaking or something.
Let me shut my computer off. That's what it is. Then. All right. It's got to come on.
Oh, never mind. It was someone else that was on. Okay, Mr. Wilkes, if you wanted to present your application.
Yeah, we're next to each other. Probably 1 second.
That will do it.
He's MacBook Pro 15. We couldn't get his name changed. We've been sitting here for an hour trying to figure it out.
But anywho, sorry. I'm Marshawn Wilkes of 10201 Rooster Road. And my partner Justin is also here as well. And we applied for a variance due to fence height and I think fence material. OMAA standards were different from the city of Oklahoma standards. We hired someone to grow medical marijuana, and we hired someone to build us a fence. Paid him about, and when it was all said and done, about $18,000 with material and labor and extra things. And we asked him every time, you know, through the whole process, did you pull a permit? Did you pull a permit every time? And he said he didn't until he got to the end and realized where he put the fence was the whole farm is separated by middle fence. So right, oh, you can't see that. So right here, there's a cattle fence in between where we put the greenhouse and the fence within the greenhouse, but it's actually almost 100 yards away from the front of the building, but it's technically still in front of the main structure where the residence lies by about, by a couple of feet. But it seemed the most ideal place because we have a side fence kind of going into the actual greenhouse structure in the front of the house. So it was more of an ideal place to put the fence, but of course we would have moved the fence backwards behind the house if he just pulled a permit in the first place. And we told him, you know, from the beginning, to pull a permit, then we get to the end and we try to get everything certified. This is the last step in our process. We've been dealing with this for a year as far as buying the license in August, finding property and things like that. We're just really trying to get our business going. And I'll let Justin chime in if he has anything else to add.
Hi all. Marshawn pretty much summed it up. But yes, basically, I guess some of the points that were, you know, out of our control had to do with the contractor and him, basically just misleading us when it came to the permit itself. So to just clarify and not beat a dead horse, I was there the one day I spoke with him specifically. He did have a couple employees that spoke English. He didn't speak English very well, but he did understand the terms. And he said he would bring it. And then I started getting a little nervous as we got towards the end. So I said, well, you need to bring it or we're going to have to just stop work. Mind you, we already have, basically the entire fence up. It's an 8-foot corrugated metal fence. And we were just putting the gates on that day. And he showed up with a work permit, but that's just, a work permit saying that he's okay to do work, not, a fence permit, the permit that we need to, get a license and be in good standing and then be able to move forward and apply with the OMA. So at that point, I tried to work with the contractor. His boss came down and was really not willing to work with me at all. I guess that's a separate issue. But I was really trying to sort this matter out the best I could between us, whatever it may be, maybe take the fence down and move it. Because the way I see it is that, we paid him and part of the job was to get the permit. And then the other part of the job is to, do the labor. I don't consider myself any kind of expert on those things. So that's, what I'm paying him for in my eyes is to make sure that those things are on the up and up. And again, like Marshawn said, if he had just originally pulled the permit like he said, he would have known that in Oklahoma City, you can only have a 6-foot fence in front of the front wall of the fence, not an 8-foot fence. And that's really where our entire problem, started. We do have our greenhouse that was already, built in that location. We have a tremendous amount of money into this, and we're really, really just looking forward to starting our business. And we've had our ups and downs like most, but if we could, get this variance, and if you guys would be, willing to do that for us, it'd be great. We'd be very, very grateful. for that, for being able to help us, continue with our business. We've already lost one season, and that's a lot of money to our business. And we really don't want to be in a position where we're going to be taking any more, financial losses like that, really because of something that I believe a contractor should have taken care of to begin with.
Okay.
And one more note, when it comes to the paperwork, because that's a thing also, we thought, well, how about we just take 2 feet off the top of the fence, make it a 6-foot fence, but that doesn't work because OMMA, they require an 8-foot security fence, just like the one that we have. And they would not allow a 6-foot fence. So that again is the issue, 2 feet. 2 feet is really what's stopping our entire business at this point.
And that fence had to be corrugated, so we have to make sure we got, strong, proper material.
Okay. I don't see in the application that there's a variance request for the type of fence that it is. Is that?
Mrs. Larkin told me she was adding that to the application as she spoke with me in an email and said I spoke with her and Thad Johnson, and Mr. Johnson, one of those two told me that it needed to be added to the actual application. So it should be in there because we spoke via email that needed to be added also.
Well, we'll just get city staff to chime in now. Do they need a variance for the type of fence that it is?
Yeah, I think if you grant the variance for the fence as submitted in the application, that will take care of it.
This is Laura. It looks as though the agenda only references the fence height. Is the material that they are seeking to have, is that permissible in AA?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking him. I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You trying to work?
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, that is my question. I think if it's just height, because of where this is located, we don't even need to get into the material.
Right.
Then that changes some things. But if it's height and the material, then we would need to kind of analyze that as well.
It should be just height in a AA agricultural area.
Okay. And then the applicants, do you know if that's accurate? Do you need a variance for the type of fence that it is or just the height?
No, not that I believe. I had an email exchange. I wish I could remember her name off the top of my head. But I had an email exchange with someone in the the permitting department. And she, asked what type of fence it was. I told her that it was a corrugated fence. She told me that there was no issues, with that type of fence, the way I was building it.
Okay. The reason I ask is not just to be too particular. It's actually to help you.
Oh,
If we
I'm just going off of what Ms. Larkin told me or Mr. Johnson, one of the two told me that the type of fence would need a variance as well. And I'd rather be safe than sorry, if we're able to get it. If that's an issue, I'd rather find that out beforehand instead of coming back next month or the next agenda if that wasn't the case. I wouldn't have said it if they didn't tell me that. I was like, yeah, please add that to the application. Thank you. And that was that.
Yeah. So the issue with that is, I know JJ said that he thinks we can go ahead and approve perhaps the type of fence that it is based on the way the application is currently worded, but there's no supporting information in here for us, for the board.
Well, your word, I'll take your word over anybody else.
Hold on just a second.
Mr. Merchant?
Yes.
This is Cindy. So I'm looking at the applicant file, and there was a fence permit issued with for a 6-foot fence at this address, and the comments say the corrugated metal. So they were issued a permit. It's just it was built as an 8-foot. So they.
Okay, so
the fence permit has been issued.
Yeah, they would not have received a permit if they couldn't have built corrugated metal, is what you're saying.
Right. In the comments on the permit, it says the type is a corrugated metal fence.
Okay. So we're
At
back
6
to just
foot.
height. Okay.
Yes.
And the reason I say that again was to help you because let's say we approve the height today, and then you find out that you need another variance for the type of metal, then you're coming back here and buying another application fee. So trying to get that all wrapped into one application fee.
Felicia Knight was who we spoke with. Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, I'm comfortable moving forward on just the height. I'll ask the applicant if you need some more time to clarify and confirm that you don't need anything else, we can do that, or we can keep pressing forward on the height issue. I defer to you on that.
So let's press forward.
Okay. So my only starting question is, well, I guess to begin is, at what point did you guys realize that there was an issue? Was it after it was already constructed?
Right when the fence was up and he came and we started to do the gate, we realized that he still hasn't pulled a permit yet. We haven't seen a permit. But that was the point where we decided to stop. I withheld payment for maybe a week or two before he got with the permit. And we needed to see the permit and everything was great. And then we saw the real issue when we went to file. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay. So I ended up being up there. My partner had some things that he had to attend to. But what happened with that, just to answer your question, I believe it was a Saturday or a Sunday. I was up there. I stay out in Dallas, and then my partner, one of my other partners, Brett, he's up there. So we were having our contractor for the fence, do work. So he was, banging it out very, very quickly. And I went up there literally on like a Saturday. And then by the next day, Sunday, I walk up and I asked, because I was doing some other things for permits. We had a couple of the contractors there building out some of the other houses on the property. And, it dawned on me, let me make sure I get this one. So I asked him, and then that's when what I had explained to you earlier, when he had told me that. So then I told him, well, look, you got by Monday. By Monday, I have to have that permit in my hand, even if you got to take the day off from work or whatever it is. So that next day, he said, I'll bring it in Sunday, Monday. Didn't bring it in. Finally, Monday comes, and he didn't show up, but his son showed up and gave me his work permit, not the permit to build the fence. So, I told him that's an issue. We spoke. I contacted the contractor and then also his boss. I wasn't aware. Once I found that out, that's when I told him, hey, look, I can't have you continue building the fence. And again, this is when the fence is already, put up, welded, all this. The only thing that was remaining were the gates.
That's what I meant. The gate.
Yeah, that's the only thing was the gate. Yeah.
That went part of the process.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
all but gate.
It happened pretty quickly.
This was all before the permit was
Sorry,
issued
what's
on April 28th, 2020, right? They had already constructed the fence?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And what I'm really getting at is, I think you guys know the ideal circumstances through no fault of your own, but the ideal circumstance is you come and try to get the variance before you build the fence or build whatever building you're going to build, you come and try to get a variance. And so
Agreed. There would have been a need for variance if he knew firsthand you couldn't build that type of fence in the front of where it's located in the first place. Now, if it was behind the house, from what we researched, this wouldn't be a non-issue because the fence will be in back of the house. Like if you look, one of the pictures we have, the fence is just a little bit in front of the house, but it's like 100 yards away from the house because it's 5 acres. I have a lot of land and it's 5 acres and we kind of built that. We have the home on one side, and we got a cattle fence in the middle, and on the other side of the 5 acres is where it is. But technically, if you draw a line, straight across horizontally, the back of the fence is lined up with the front of the house. So that kind of makes it, where we have to have a variance. But if we knew that in the first place, we just moved it in back. We've got a lot of land. So if he just built it in the back and cleared out that land and put the fence there, this would be a non-issue for us.
Yeah. Okay.
We're just trying to do everything right.
I don't want to beat you guys up too bad because it wasn't anything intentional on your parts.
Yeah,
And
we can take it.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's fine.
in these circumstances, what we normally do, or at least what I normally do, is try to put myself in the situation of the request coming before the fence actually went up, and then see if we would have granted the variance in that circumstance. And so that's what I'll do right now. I think we probably would have granted the variance if this would have come the right way. I think there's a hardship here between kind of the interplay between the OMMA rules, which require an 8-foot fence, this is a security fence, and what the city requires. I think it's more or less peculiar to the property. It doesn't pose a substantial detriment to the public good. And I think 2 feet is the minimum necessary to alleviate that hardship that we've talked about. So I think we might have granted this request had it come before you guys built the fence, other than the fact that it could have been built back and there would have been nothing preventing that. But we can't really address that at this point because it's too late. All that said, I mean, I can support the application. I would want it to be limited to the fence that already exists, which I think it would be, so that there's not any chance that an additional 8-foot fence goes up in a new area. So that's kind of where I stand on it. I don't know that I would put a temporal time limit on it or anything, but that's kind of where I stand. And I'll defer to the rest of the board members to see if they have any questions or comments.
Sounds great.
Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this application? Okay, hearing none. Board members, any questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval of case number 14765 for the reason that it meets the statutory requirements for a variance.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance in case number 14765 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And the application's approved.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Real quick, I'm sorry. How does this work? We just go, we don't know. What's the next step?
There is an appeals process in case anyone that is an interested party wants to appeal what we have approved today. That's only 10 days. And then they will send you the order that approves the variance after that, and you'll be good to go after that point. I'll defer to JJ.
Excellent. Board, we
if you have anything to add.
10 days and we'll be able to get a permit.
All right.
That'll work. Thank you. You guys have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, item 11. Case 14770, request of Mark Ferris on behalf of Orange Gate Properties for a variance to the dumpster setback, landscaping, and screening abutting a residential district located at 2000 East Britton Road. And Ethan Ferris represents the applicant.
This is Ethan Ferris here representing Orange Gate Properties. We've come to the Board of Adjustment today to apply for a variance on the 3 items that JJ just listed. The 25-foot setback, the screening and buffering adjacent to a residential zoning, also the landscape buffer that would be required abutting the zoning of residential to the south. Really, the biggest thing to understand here is that although that this property to the south of us is zoned residential, the use is clearly not that. The use currently, as it stands, is an AT&T facility. They have a cell tower, a big brick building, a metal building, a gravel storage yard. They pretty much have developed the entire parcel of land there. So they don't really have anything to add. There are no houses located on that property. Really, the hardship here is because it is zoned residential, the city ordinances say we must construct a dumpster 25 feet from the property line. We must erect a site-proof fence along the entire property line. And we also must have a 5-foot landscape buffer between the C3 and residential zoning. Those 3 items alone would probably be a minimum of $30,000 to construct. The other item that I'd like to throw kind of in there on the hardship is we had a site plan done that was really kind of an efficient design. And the location of our dumpster was really the best access through our parking lot by the waste collection trucks that would, really collect our trash. If we have to go moving that, we are only going to increase our footprint, our hardscape, and really kind of just add more cost. Really, the conditions are peculiar to the particular piece of property involved because, AT&T, I guess, is allowed in a residential zoning, but it's just clearly not being used as residential. It's not relevant because it's, they're utilizing the land as more of a commercial business, not as a utility company. If the relief was granted to us, it's not going to cause any detriment to the public or really mess up the comprehensive plan. This is on the corner of East Britain Road and Eastern Avenue. I believe this AT&T facility has been located there for well over 30 years. They just recently, in the last 5 years, added to their little property with that gravel laydown yard. They don't have any windows that face the north to our property, so there is really no reason to have that screening. And then really, if the variance is granted, it is the minimum necessary to alleviate that hardship. Really what we're asking the Board of Adjustment to do is let us develop our property on the corner there as just really a normal development of abutting similar uses. If it is granted, it just allows for a logical layout and use of our property. If there's any questions or comments, I can follow up and get those answered.
Okay, I appreciate your presentation today. One of the issues I had was there just was not a lot of information in the application for us to go off of, but I think what you presented here was very helpful. I think it's a bit of a unique situation. Normally in these types of circumstances where you're requesting multiple variances, it's sort of the applicant trying to change the zoning and getting around it through a variance, which in limited circumstances is okay. But when you start getting multiple variances, it starts becoming a problem. For here, I mean, for this application, it seems like AT&T is kind of rezoned the area that forces you to make different development choices that might not make sense. And so, I think that alone is a hardship. And I think, it checks all the other boxes for granting these variances from my perspective. Board members, any questions or comments of the applicant? Okay, I don't believe I have anyone else that signed up ahead of time to speak on this application, but was anyone on the line that wanted to speak on this application? Okay, I think we can open up the voting pane at this point, and if anyone wanted to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve case number 14770 based upon the fact that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, it looks like we have a second from Mr. Ybarra. So we have a motion and a second to approve the variances in case number 14770 for the reason that they meet the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And the application's approved.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Item 12 is 14767, application for special exception of Troy Nichols to allow lodging accommodations, home sharing at 3000 Northwest 11th Street.
The applicant on the line,
I am. I'm here.
you wanted to introduce yourself and present your application?
Sure. My name's Troy Nichols. This is the first time I've been through this process, so I apologize if I give you too much or not enough information, so feel free to follow up afterwards. I know you will. I've got a property at, this is 3000 Northwest 11th Street.
Could you start with your address, sir, just for the record?
Yeah, I was just doing that. It's at 3000 Northwest 11th Street.
Oh, no, I'm not, unless, do you live at this address?
No, I do not.
Okay, yeah, so we just meant your address, particularly for these kinds of applications so that we know whether you live in the area or out of state or what's going on.
Oh, okay. I actually live at 2517 Southwest 141st Street. It's in South Oklahoma City, 73170.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to continue?
Let me unmute myself. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the property in question is at 3000 Northwest 11th Street. It is a 3-bed, 2-bath, uncovered parking for up to 3 vehicles, depending on their size and length. I put up security fencing around the property. It's still under renovation, so the landscaping has not been updated yet, but it will be done up very professionally. And I have, let me see where I'm at. I'm getting kind of off track. I just want to start with myself a little bit, just so you guys know who I am. I've been in the rental business since 2008. Started out with just a rental of my personal home when I built the new house. So since then, I've been doing it so that I could help take care of my kids at home and not, be gone all the time. And over those years, I've gained a lot of experience. And in the last year or so, I got into the Airbnb business. It was actually through a tenant of mine that got me into it, honestly. And I have been doing that. I've been managing one for about 10 months, 10, 11 months. I've gained superhost status, which means that I have the highest level of quality for my guests. And also at that address, which really isn't that home, which really is kind of in the same area. I've never had any disruptions or disturbances. The neighbors have never complained. I've gotten to know some of the neighbors pretty well, as I do with all my rentals. I try to be the neighbor. So in case anyone has any, this view that I'm the type of landlord that just comes in, buys the home and rents it out and it's never there anymore. That's not how I operate. It's just me and my wife doing it. So we try to be very involved and develop a close relationship with the neighbors. And, if it's a long-term tenant, then that tenant as well. In this case, I'm asking to get an exception to make this a nightly rental as an Airbnb, also listed probably on VRBO. Our marketing strategy is to actually target the upper end of that market. So what that entails is a slightly different marketing strategy. I spend more on my house finishes. I make it a nicer home. So you go around and you look at some of the homes that are going for $150 a square foot. That's probably about where the finishes are going to be in my home and on the exterior with the landscaping. I hire a professional landscaping service to maintain the property on the exterior throughout the year. It's an annual thing. I've got cleaners that will come in and clean the home inside and also notify me if there are any issues on the exterior of the home as well. Basically every time a guest checks out. So my experience is the Airbnb is way better for me as a owner of that property, as an investment, because I'm able to keep it in a brand new condition. And as opposed to my long-term rentals, when someone's living in the home with their family, it's very difficult to get in there and upkeep things on a regular basis because, you're invading their space, their private space, and you try to make that balance. So one thing I will say is that these Airbnb properties are not, they are well maintained. and they are kept up because the marketing strategy requires it. No one in the upper end of those markets is going to want to stay in a home that's been ran down, has broken appliances, has junk in the yard, you name it. So I'm pretty much in a position where I must keep the home up to its most potential. As far as, I don't know if you guys have any questions as far as me personally or this particular home, if there's any issues in that location. Again, this is the first time I've had to get in a special exception for this. It's fairly new, I think, for the city as well, in the grand scheme of things. So I'm just gonna leave it there and let you guys ask me questions.
Okay, so I think your application goes through the questions that I was going to ask, but 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and parking accommodation is up to 3 vehicles off street. Is that accurate?
No, that's all. Off street. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how many, I assume you're going to rent out all rooms. How many guests were you going to market this as the maximum number of guests?
The maximum number of guests will be 6 people.
Okay.
So we feel like anything greater than that may cause too much wear and tear on the home and on the appliances and whatnot. 6 should accommodate most guests. At least that's where we're at the point. But what I'm finding actually is a lot of times it may not be 6 guests. I'm getting a lot of people that are, 2, 3, 4 guests. They're people that normally would go to a hotel when they visit Oklahoma City, but they don't want to due to current health concerns with all the human traffic in those public places. And so I'm getting a lot more bookings that are just, it's harder to determine if they're going to be 1 or 6 or if they're going to be business, or they're usually business or families. Actually, been getting some others that have had hospital visits and whatnot, but yeah, 6 people is the max.
Okay. And there has been one protest letter. I don't know if you have received that or.
Well, I was made aware of it yesterday. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to address any concerns with that particular neighbor. I've actually gotten to know the neighbor, so the house next to my house, you see. Her name's Cindy. Me and her talk all the time when I'm over there. We have an arrangement. I help her with anything she needs, and well, I do anyways, whether it's an arrangement or not. And she lets me know if there's any issues going on with the property, because and the other neighbor across the street on the east side, I've gotten to know her. I've talked to her 4 or 5 times. And so I would have reached out to this neighbor had I known in advance that there were issues that I could have maybe addressed in person, but we'll do it here. I mean,
yeah, I think your application and also your presentation today has addressed a lot of those, but it looks like she's on the line, so she'll have an opportunity to speak.
Sure.
To respond. Yeah. Before we get to that, board members, did you have any questions of the applicant before we move on to other steps?
My other questions deals with his other 2 that's coming up, so I'll just wait until they're presented.
Okay. Seeing no other questions from the board, Mr. Nichols, if you could mute your computer, and Ms. Vest, if you're able to unmute at this time, we'll recognize you to speak.
See. Hi. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to meet Troy. I just heard about this like last week. So I'm really just reacting on what everybody thinks when you're going to have Airbnb move in across the street. I'm Barbara Vest, and my husband and I live at 3005 Northwest 11th Street. That's diagonally across the street from the house in question. I purchased our house in the year 2000, actually signing the closing papers 20 years ago this week. And as a longtime homeowner in the neighborhood, I don't feel adjusting the code to allow a short-term rental property would be in the best interest of us and our neighbors or our property values, as a rotating cast of people arrives and departs and noise and traffic levels increase. The proximity to the state fairgrounds and later to the new arena would also make the property appealing potentially as a party type house, further disrupting the neighborhood, one that already faces challenges due to the high activity levels along Brookline Avenue. I completely understand the appeal of the location and Yellow Key Investments' logic in wanting to turn it into a short-term rental property, but feel that if the property can't be owned by a single family who is invested in the upkeep of the house and yard and personal involvement in the surrounding community, then offering it as a standard long-term rental seems like a reasonable compromise. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions of Ms. Vest? Okay, thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Nichols, if you wanted to respond to any of those comments.
Yeah. So yeah, I was reading that over. As far as the parties go, we do not allow parties. Most Airbnbs don't, but we have a hard and fast rule that we do not allow any type of parties. The gatherings are pretty much limited to those that are there, and maybe if they have one or two family members, perhaps in town over as guests. But parties are a no-go. It's just too hard on my properties. I mean, this is an investment for me. And as far as property values go, that brings me to that. So since I purchased the property and by the time I'm done, that property is going to be more than double in value. There will be an appraisal and it will appraise way higher than many of the other properties in that area. That area is being renovated, but it's kind of in the middle of that. Right now, property values are going up and people are buying and renovating, but there's still a lot of homes that haven't been fully renovated or renovated at all. And so I feel like, my presence there, purchasing that home and investing the money that I am into making it a nicer home overall is beneficial, especially to the neighbors directly around it. They will see their property values increase as homes sell around that area. If I were to sell that home, well, then that would directly go into their comps. So when a realtor goes to sell their home, they can list it at a higher price because they're going to have higher comps. And as far as, disruption, I mean, honestly, you're talking about typically 1 to 2 vehicles at most for a party, or not, I want to say party, for a guest booking. And it's really not any more traffic than a normal home. They're usually there to do the same things that we all do. They're not there to throw big parties or whatnot. And then also just to make sure they're not, I am beginning to put in security cameras that will allow me not only to see if someone vandalizes or damages the property, but then if I find out that, maybe some behavior disturbed the neighbors, I can go back and I can actually see what has taken place and then take appropriate action through the proper channels at that point in time, whether that be through an Airbnb or a VRB arbitration or whatever with that guest. But I do put forward my best foot to avoid those interactions. One, I definitely don't want to cause my neighbors to have any detriment to their property values or their quality of life with my business. That's why I put great care into it. And I don't know if there's any other concerns of hers I didn't address. Also, I'd like to say that typically I will be at the home, at the property at least once a week. It's probably going to be more than that in the beginning. It's not that far for me. And if I have other properties in the area, which I actually have one that's already operating, I'm there quite often. So I can see if there's problems, if somebody's put ruts in the yard or just in any way has made it less aesthetically pleasing during my absence, I can address that quickly. I promise you that. If you talk to any of my regular tenants, you would know that since 2008, I don't think I've ever had a tenant go longer than 48 hours to get into something addressed. So I'm very, very aware of people's concerns and their quality of life, and I want to uphold that to the best that it can be as far as my contribution to that.
Okay. I think Ms. Vest would probably respond to the party point by saying there's not much you can do to prevent that if you're not aware of it.
Well, my wife and I also screen the guest, so we try to find out as much information. We don't book anyone until we know why they're there. And honestly, I've had guests that I wasn't sure, and so you know what, I might go by and check. and then I ask the neighbors, you know, because that's why I have such a good rapport with the neighbor next door, Cindy. She can let me know if that's occurring, and I'm 15-minute drive away. I can be there, and I have no problem telling someone to tone it down if they're disturbing someone else's peace. So
you offering to, well, I'll go back to the partying point. Do you currently advertise the property as not allowing parties expressly? Yes. Do you say that? Okay. Because that sometimes alleviates the neighbor's concerns just as a deterrent. If the listing says parties are expressly prohibited, you know, this, that, or the other thing.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty common. I mean, it's kind of a big deal on Airbnb that that some hosts have had that happen. And it's addressed. It's widely known and talked about in that circle. And so we try to do the most we can to eliminate that. You know, there are a lot of things that can be avoided just by taking precautionary measures. Yes, it could happen to me. I hope it never does. I'm going to do my best to make sure that the situation does not lend itself to that type of activity at my property, because I have just as much to lose, if not, I have more to lose, basically, than any of my neighbors if that were to happen. I mean, they could cost me thousands of dollars of damage to the property, years of heartache with my neighbors. I will do everything I can not to allow that to happen. And that's just the most I can offer, other than practical measures, security cameras, fences, screening, and just paying attention.
So I know you mentioned that you planned on putting security cameras. If we condition the approval on putting at least a camera, you know, front facing camera into the street or the front door or something like that. So Airbnb,
that's fine. That's what I plan on doing, is putting in a camera right there on the front.
There's some requirements and prohibitions on putting them inside in different areas, but I think outside is
yeah, I won't put cameras inside the home just for people's privacy, but yes, I have no, it is part of my plan. It's just not something that happens at this stage in the renovation of it or in the getting ready. It'll be one of the last steps.
Okay. And just not so much a question for you, but more just commentary on the application and the objection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get these objections a lot, although we haven't seen one of these applications in a little while, I think just because of the COVID thing. But as far as home values, that's always a concern, but my understanding statistically is it's a concern, but it generally does tip in your favor because these homes, you know, it's a competitive platform. And so your home has to look good in order to get guests. And so that makes you keep the home up pretty well. And also it's a way to generate income, which, you know, if you get the special exception and that carries with the property potentially, or you tell people that it's an Airbnb home or something like that, where they can earn X amount of money, that can increase the value of the property. And that has actually negative consequences for people that want to keep their home prices down and keep an affordable neighborhood and things like that.
True.
It's a double-edged.
I would advocate for, and I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize for that. I just wanted to say that personally, and as far as pushing people out, I'm personally, and this may not have anything to do with this, but I'm an advocate for integrated, I can't remember the word for it right now. I'm sorry, it just slipped my head. But, you know, where you have residential housing and multi-unit development in an area that allows people on all levels of the economic scale to enjoy that quality of life in that area. So yes, by fixing up the home the way I have and the way it's going to be, it is going to increase property values, which may have a negative impact on some people to afford homes in that area. So I will try to strive in other areas of politics and bureaucracy to push other possible ways to keep that from happening, I suppose.
Yeah. And then the other concern that always comes up, and the general objection that comes up in these cases, is people not wanting home sharing at all around them.
Yeah.
You know, from our perspective, it's been kind of settled for our purposes, and the city council made it possible for people to have home sharing in different areas. They could have banned it altogether. Different cities have done it. They could have banned it altogether, and they didn't. They chose to go through this process. So that tells us that the city doesn't want to ban all these, and then we have different guidelines that we're supposed to analyze each application under. But what's not the case is that there's no home sharing in Oklahoma City. The city council has told us that is not the case. So for people that have that objection that they just don't want it around, it generally doesn't carry the day. And then we analyze under the guidelines that the city council has provided to us. Board members, any questions or comments? I know one issue that has not been addressed yet is the time period. We're allowed to grant this for up to 10 years, although we've never done that. We generally do them for shorter periods of time, particularly if there's some neighbors that are uncertain about the impact on the neighborhood. A lot of times, you know, what ends up happening is we grant an application for a shorter amount of time. The neighbors realize that the sky's not going to fall, and you know, you're not going to have a bunch of parties and kids racing up and down the street, and they don't object anymore after that. And so we've generally been granting for anywhere between 1 to 3 years, and then bring the applicants back to us just to follow up and see and make sure everything's going well, and then potentially grant a longer special exception after that. So how long were you thinking? We've got you still on mute, Mr. Nichols.
Sorry. I wasn't sure how that actually worked with the granting of the special exception. I mean, as long of a time frame as you are comfortable giving me, of course, that's what I would like. No, definitely no less than a year, because I won't be able to tell you much unless I've had it operating for a full year. You know, overall where it's going, how it's worked. You know, that's just I need at least a year's worth of data. But 3 years, it would also save me. I guess I have to pay another fee to do this at the end of the time period that you give me. So I would request that if you're willing to go as much as 3 years, that's what I would request.
Okay. I'm only one board member, but that's kind of what I had in mind, is 2 to 3 years. Board members, any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, I've got just one. The summary of the application has several bullet points: marketing, capacity, parking. Can we incorporate that as a condition of the special exception? I like his own limitations, including no parties.
I think some of those, I mean, we have a lot of flexibility with this. The city council said that we can grant any conditions that we want. I think some of them might not be necessary. So, you know, the capacity and the square footage isn't going to change.
Right.
But I guess on the application, it says 4 guests. He's mentioned 6 today. And so that is.
Is that wait, which application are you looking at? Is that the right one?
Yeah, Northwest 11th.
I don't know why that's at 4. That should be at 6. Maybe it got confused with one of the properties we're going to discuss next. There is one other property that only has a max occupancy of 4, but with 3 bedrooms, that would be 6.
Well, I didn't have a problem with 6.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize if anything was misstated on that. I really didn't.
Yeah. I mean, 3 bedrooms, 6 makes sense. So.
Yeah, 3 bed, 2 bath. That should accommodate 6 people pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Voorhees, are you thinking about maybe incorporating the off-street parking only, at least maybe as off-street parking only.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent he can control his guests, these self-imposed restrictions made a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could just say that the self-imposed restrictions as stated in the application, except for 6 guests instead of 4. And then a security camera facing a front-facing camera.
The fence is already in, so.
Okay. And then for the time limit,
3 years is okay with me. I'd kind of think 2 might be better, given the neighbor's concern, but I can go with either 2 or 3.
Okay, Ms. Asbury or Ybarra?
I opt for 3.
Okay.
Mike, are you incorporating those marketing restrictions in your motion as well?
Yes. Yeah, I think those self-imposed restrictions kind of help the neighborhood, and I appreciate them. So,
And as for time, I could get on board with 3 years.
then that's a motion if somebody can articulate everything I just said for 3 years.
Well, it looks like we've got an option for a motion. So if someone wanted to move, I mean, I think I would probably word the motion as, you know, a motion to approve for a period of 3 years, subject to the conditions as stated in the application, with the exception of 6 guests.
Right.
Advertised as 6 guests instead of 4 guests.
Pretty much what I meant to say. So that's my motion.
Okay.
Move it, Mike. Okay. I'll second it, Kitty.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve case number 14767. And it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years, subject to the conditions stated in the application, other than modifying the maximum number of guests advertised as 6 instead of 4. Cast your votes, please. Well, Mike, does that accurately convey?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And the application's approved. And then I think, Mr. Nichols, it's you again, but we'll go ahead and have JJ for the record. Okay.
These next 2 applications are on the same piece of property. So if you like, I'll just read those both together. We can consider them together and vote on them separately.
Okay.
So item 13, 14766 and 14769, request for home sharing, special exception at 2911 North McKinley and 1500 Northwest 29th Street.
Okay, Mr. Nichols, if you wanted to present kind of similar to what we did with the other one. But it looks like we've got you on mute again.
Well, since you know all about me already, I won't go there. Let's start with the, okay, that's 2911. So that is a small house. It's a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. It's got a living area, a kitchen, and a laundry room, and a little side deck patio. And we've done a lot of nice little landscaping in the yard. And there's a shop building where one of the walls is shared with the open yard space. We've put in a flower bed, and we're talking with a painter right now to put in an artistic mural, maybe something very colorful, abstract, whatnot. It will accommodate up to 4 guests. We expect that usually it's probably going to be 2 guests. It's very cozy, intimate, and in a great location right off OCU campus. Down the street from 23rd. There's plenty of parking because I actually have, what you can't see in this shot is a big shop. Well, so there's at least 3 parking spaces there, plus the parking space that is over by the fence. And later on, we may have, there is a small 1-car garage that right now is being used for storage. There is the option that we may offer that to guests as well. Once it's cleaned out, and if we see that if it's needed, we might do that. That isn't something that we're going to be doing anytime real soon, though. And so as far as that one goes, I mean, it's pretty much marketed the same way. All of these will be marketed through Airbnb and VRBO as long as those stay as going concerns in the marketplace. We are also looking towards the upper end. Again, these are all going to be finished out, very nice finishes, nice landscaping, yard, no parties. Each will have a camera. So this property will have a camera probably facing out to the front yard and the gate at which people access it. It's really the only open space there because it's a very small area. Do you have any questions concerning this particular property?
I think the discrepancy between the number, the maximum number that's going to be advertised. So on
what?
Mr. Merchant, I'm looking at the application, and it should state that it's max capacity of 4 guests instead of 8.
Okay. This is for the 2911 North McKinley Avenue.
Yes, sir.
First one. Okay. I think we got you on mute again, Mr. Nicholson.
I don't know how those got switched, but the 8 is going to be for the larger home on 1500 Northwest 29th. I guess I'll have to have a chat with my wife who filled out the paperwork.
Also in your attachment, it says 4 guests, but what got included in the application, maybe through an OCR scanning issue, it says 8 instead of 4. So
oh yeah, no, there's no way you would fit 8 people in that house very comfortably at all. I would not want 8 people in there.
Okay, so this one's 4.
Yeah.
And you want to go over the next one?
Sure. So it is a little bit larger. So just kind of give you an idea, the square footage on that one's about 1550 on the big one. Versus like 650 on the small one, and I believe it was around 12 or 13 on the previous house that we discussed. So this is it's got a much more square footage inside. That's why you're seeing 8 instead of 6 on this house, because it is also a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But some of those bedrooms are very large, where we can actually stick maybe 2 full-size beds in there. You know, if you've got a group that wants to sleep in that room, if it's a family, maybe a family gathering or whatnot. I put in the new driveway to allow for up to, I think you can fit 3 cars comfortably in there. If you had another small vehicle, you might be able to get 4 in the driveway. Of course, street parking is not unusual on that street. Most of the neighbors, you might see street parking on a daily basis as well. But I don't intend to use that street parking. Again, the landscaping is going to be done here in about, I think next weekend. We're going to tackle all of that. So that's all going to be done up. I put a brand new cedar porch on there, expanded it. The fencing has been done. There will be a security camera in the front as well. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 full, pretty large bathrooms, a full-size laundry room, pretty large for a laundry room actually, and then a nice open floor plan. When you walk in the door, basically you can see all the way through to the back of the kitchen. Huge living room, huge dining area, good sized kitchen.
And this parking involvement between the 2 properties, does that overlap at all, or are those distinct parking areas?
Those are distinct. I'm trying to, because it was a little odd that both of these houses were on the same property. The previous owner is the one, I guess, who had the 2 addresses assigned. There used to be a big asphalt parking area behind the big house, in between that and the little house. But I just tore it all out. It put a fence up to separate them so they could be 2 unique and distinct houses with their own elements. And the parking is not shared. I'm trying to keep the guests, you know, if I happen to have guests at both properties at the same time, I really don't I don't want them having to share parking with the other. They'll have their own designated parking.
Okay, that was the primary concern, which kind of overlaps with the other concern that these properties together, the total allowed number of guests would be 12. And so if someone were to rent out both for some big event or something and have a bunch of cars there, would it be able to accommodate all those cars? And
Well, so as far as events go, we don't allow events. If it is a large family that, you know, wants to get both of them. I mean, there are instances where you might have somebody's getting married. They've got family coming in from out of town. They all kind of want to stay in the same area. So maybe, you know, a couple of them are rent the small house and the rest rent the big house. There is an adjoining gate in case that happens. But in that case, we're going to be a lot more aware of what is actually going on, what they're there to do. And we will stress that there are no loud, you know, parties or events allowed other than your general family get together, having a meal and breaking bread.
Okay. Yeah, I think not that I can't get behind it, but my only kind of concern is the 8 guests instead of 6, but I could potentially support it, particularly if the rest of the board members aren't hesitant at that number at all. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. For this one, I was also thinking 3 years, just because it's a bit unique in that there's 2 properties that are together that are both being used for this purpose. And to kind of see how the city shakes out with home sharing. You know, one thing that I didn't mention on the last application, but I probably should have, that we're trying to keep an eye on is making sure that we're not changing the character of a neighborhood by adding Airbnbs on one street or something.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is okay, but, you know, potentially getting close if you have these 2 properties and then a couple more or something. So I think 3 years to me makes sense, just to keep an eye on this. And if there are no issues in that period, then we can discuss a potentially longer special exception.
Okay.
And I'm also only one member of the board, so the board can outvote me. So, board members, any questions? Well, I guess I'll say first, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, but is there anyone on the line that wanted to speak on this application or these applications? Okay, hearing none, we'll take an application for the first case, 14766, or take a motion, I'm sorry.
I would like to motion that we approve case number 14766 based upon the conditions that it meets the statutory variance for a special exception.
Okay, and then for clarity, I guess I should have asked this before listing a motion. Is this adopting the conditions that are stated, the self-imposed conditions stated in the application? Ms.
Are you
Asbury?
asking me this?
Yes.
Yes, Sam.
Okay.
With approval of what Sam just said.
Okay, and then for the applicant, is that going to be a problem other than changing the number of guests to 4 from 8?
No, those were all self-imposed for my benefit as well as the community's. So.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sam, that's changing it from 8 to 4, right? Because this is the smaller of the 2.
Correct.
Yeah. Again, I apologize for that.
No problem.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion. And this is for a period of 3 years, Ms. Asbury?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry, for a period of 3 years.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application in case number 14766 for the reason that it meets the conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years, subject to the self-imposed conditions in the application, and changing the advertised maximum number of occupants from 8 down to 4. Does that capture it accurately, Ms. Asbury?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Cast your votes, please. And that application is approved. So I think we're ready now for an application on item 14. For a motion for item 14.
You want me to do it again if no one else does it? Okay, I would like to motion that we accept item number 14769 based upon the fact that it meets statutory conditions for special addition. Special exception, should I say,
Yeah.
for a 3-year period with the special limitations.
Okay, that are stated in the application.
Yes.
And then this one's for 8, a maximum of 8.
A maximum of up to 8 guests.
Okay. I see.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the application in case number 14769 for the reason that it meets the conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years, subject to the self-imposed conditions stated in the application, the maximum number of advertised guests at 8. Pass your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
I appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful day.
You too, thank you.
Oh, am I free to go? I should ask that.
And it's the last item on the agenda, so yes, you're welcome to sign off.
Okay. Oh, one question. I know I was been watching the whole time. Another gentleman asked, what is the next step for me? I know on those others, there were variances and you said there was a 10-day wait period. What is it for a special exception?
I think it's, but I will defer to, I don't see JJ, but.
Okay. You know what? I'm sure that I can communicate with Cynthia or Cindy, I guess, later on and figure that out.
It's the same, Mr. Merchant, it's the same.
Okay.
Oh, it's the same? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir, have a good one.
All right. You too.
Mr. Chairman, a previous applicant has come back in the meeting a while back, and Mr. Dustin Knight, I don't know if he had a question or accidentally re-entered the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Knight, if you, maybe it was accidentally left on or something, but Mr. Knight, if you had something for the board, you can unmute and present that now if you like. Okay, we will come back to that in just a second, just to be sure on citizens to be heard as well. So the next items on the agenda have been continued, 15 through 17. I see no additional items on the agenda, no communications or board reports. On citizens to be heard, we will pause here for about 10 seconds. Is there anyone on the line that wanted to speak under citizens to be heard or did not get an opportunity to speak when we were discussing a particular application? Okay, hearing none and seeing no other business, we are adjourned.
Hey Sam, real quickly, this is Kitty. Do we have a meeting tomorrow too? Because I saw where there's something tomorrow, like from 9 until 10:45 or something.
There was an accident on my part, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, girl, thank you very much. Because I was like, that is a conflict for me. So thank you.
I thought Laura was trying to have a Zoom kind of social hour, but
Yeah, we'd have coffee and donuts. And
Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies.
Have a good one.
all right, thank you guys. See you at the next one.
All right, thanks.